Hey guys, welcome to lesson 3.3. We are continuing with our geometric angle relationships, but this time we're going to start to involve some equations. So for starters, let's do a couple of problems that are just to find some missing angles using geometric relationships, and then from there we will upgrade to, x's. So, when I say geometric relationships, I mean this fun stuff that we did 2 days ago, I believe. This is the note sheet from that day, and these are the relationships that we're going to use to solve these problems. So, for the first one, we have two angles here. One of them is here, and the other one is here. So if you look at this picture, you're like, okay, these are the highlighted ones, and you go to the next slide, and you ask yourself, okay, which of these pictures does that look the most like? And hopefully you would choose this one, because you notice that these have the two angles very nicely lined up. So we're going to go with corresponding angles. So we can go ahead and decide that we have corresponding angles. Not a ton of space, but we'll be all right. And then the measurement relationship of corresponding angles is in this third column here. So with corresponding, we can see that the angle relationship is that they are congruent. So we'll go back and we'll write congruent. Okay, so if you know that the angles are congruent, that means that they are literally the same. So if this angle is 49, then this missing angle is also going to be 49. All right, so the next one we have, oh, yikes. We have these ones. We have a 65 here, and our question mark is here on the other side. If we look at our table, and we want to find a matching picture, it makes the most sense that it's vertical angles, right? We found the kissing mice. Or you can also think of it as the X angle. Anytime you can make that X and see those kissing mice, then you know that they are vertical. Okay, and the measurement relationship for vertical angles is that those are also congruent, right? Those are equal angles. So we will write congruent. And since they are congruent, we know that if this one's 65, the other one is also 65. All right, one more of these. Now this one's going to be a little bit interesting. We have this guy over here, and then we have this one. So let's, look closely at what's going on in the picture. They're both on this side together. They're both between the two parallel lines. So when we go to our table, we're like, okay, which picture does that match with? And you'll notice that it looks the most like our supplementary, same side interior angles. So we're going to go ahead and say that those are same side interior, and again, that's because they're between the parallel lines, and they're on the same side of the transversal. So we've got ourselves some same side interiors. Okay, and the measurement relationship between same-side interiors are actually supplementary. So those two angles have to add up to 180 degrees. That's what that's telling us. Okay, so to find the angle in this one, we actually got to figure out what do we need to add to 63 to equal 180. And the best way for us to find that is just by doing some basic subtraction. 180 minus 63, and that's going to give us our angle. And if I do my math correctly, that's going to be 117 degrees. So we have a 117 degree angle. Alright, so now that we've done some practice just using the table, identifying relationships, and finding missing angles, we are going to step it up a little bit. And we're going to start the same way, but now we're going to have to use some more involved equations. So for this one, we want to find our relationship first, just like before. We notice that it's another x angle, right? We found the kissing mice, and that tells us that these are vertical angles. Okay, now vertical angles are congruent, if you remember. And here's how you want to use your table. So once we find out that we have vertical angles and they're congruent, you have to scroll down to the bottom, and there are directions for every kind of measurement angle. So when you have congruent angles, you have to set them equal to each other and solve for x. You literally just have to follow these directions. So that's what we're going to do. We will set our angles equal to each other. So let's say that we have x plus 70, and that's going to equal 60. Okay, this is my one angle, this is the other. So that's the equation that we're working with. Once we set that up, we can go ahead and solve for x using it. So we would subtract 70 from both sides. And then we find out that x is going to equal negative 10. So my answer is negative 10. And x is not actually the angle itself, it's just a variable that's part of an angle, so don't worry about the fact that it's negative. Alright, so the next one. We have one angle here, and we have one angle here. You use your table, and you think about which picture that looks like. It definitely looks like the same side interior picture. And that tells us that we have supplementary angles. So what do we do when we have supplementary angles? We add them and we set them equal to 180. So let's do that. So we got same side interior. We know that those are supplementary. And so let's make our equation. If we know that they're supplementary, we got to add them. And then set them equal to 180. Now we're ready to solve for x. So we can start by combining our like terms. So we know that the 70 and the 118 can combine. That would become 188. And then we have one little remaining step to get x truly by itself, and that would be to subtract 188 from both sides. So our final answer is that x equals negative 8. All right, one last problem. We have 9x plus 4 in one angle and 85 in another. One here and one here. Now, let's go back to the table and see which image that looks the most like. Okay, we could kind of tell it doesn't really look like corresponding. It doesn't look like same side because they're on different sides, and it wasn't the kissing mice. So it definitely looks the most like alternate interior because you notice that there's that Z going on. So if we go back, right, we see that we have a pretty good Z. So we can use that relationship to find this. Their alternate interior. And let's go ahead and look at the measurement relationship of alternate interiors. We know that alternate interiors are congruent. So we're going to scroll to the bottom for our directions. Congruent means we have to set them equal to each other. So we can say that they're congruent. It's just nice to leave ourselves a little note so we know what we're using. And because they're congruent, we will set them equal to each other. So we'll say 9x plus 4, that's one angle, equals 85. That's what it means to set two things equal to each other, right? Just do one equal sign other. And now we're ready to solve for x. So we do our line, Let's subtract 4 from both sides, because remember we're trying to get x alone. So that leaves us with 9x equals 81. And our last step would be to divide both sides by 9. So x is going to equal 9. Okay, and then that is all for today. You will need to do this, or need to be able to do this, for our test, which, by the way, is going to be on Tuesday.